The sad truth is that the RAAC problem is just one of many problems connected with school repairs. The Department of Education gave an annual report saying the risk of collapse of one or more blocks in some schools which are at or approaching the end of their designated life expectancy and structural integrity is impaired. In other words, we're at a point where schools are going to fall to pieces. And in 2021, the Department of Education estimated that it would cost £6 billion for repairs on buildings put up between the 1950s and 1970s. And that's about half the school repairs bill of £11.4 billion. Most 1950s school buildings need about £400,000 in maintenance work done on them. So we've got ageing school buildings that probably need more work on the structure than the hospital buildings in the NHS. And there is a backlog of maintenance work building up. And that's partly because although the Labour government set up a scheme to sort out the maintenance, it was called Building Schools for Future, in 2004, the Conservative coalition scrapped it in 2010. And since then, the rebuilding schools budget has been squeezed even further. So austerity has had a big impact on the amount of money that can be put forward for maintaining and rebuilding schools. So we're in July, I think, this year, it was 572 schools were identified as in need of rebuilding and having ageing RAAC. That's significantly more than the number which have been closed, or which have had parts of their building closed. And Gillian Keegan's shameless attempt to transfer the responsibility onto the schools themselves, who, quote, haven't completed a questionnaire, is simply puerile. Puerile coming from the Latin word for puer, boy. It's the stuff of immaturity. And so, therefore, I think the chances of ministers sorting this out in the immediate future are zero. So what is RAAC? RAAC is a reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete. It's a form of concrete which was developed in Sweden in the 1920s, and it was designed to improve thermal insulation. But between the 1950s and the 1990s, it was a form of concrete that allowed for a very quick and very effective building. In the 1980s, beams made of RAAC started falling to pieces, and part of the problem was water seeping into the concrete through the holes. This concrete looks like a block of aero, very nice to eat, very dangerous when it starts to get old. Even if you leave a block of aero out on your desk, which has happened a few times, when you pick it up again, it crumbles. The same thing is true of the concrete. And the concrete has also got bars running through them. So if there's water damage, there's water and rust involved as well. And this can lead to sagging, it can lead to cracking, it can lead to corrosion of the embedded metal components, significantly more common than in ordinary concrete. Added to which, of course, there's always the possibility that builders were cutting corners and that was missing or poorly constructed reinforcement bars in the first place. So there's quite a lot of issues here. There were roof collapses in the 1980s which triggered investigations, and there was a particular roof collapse in 2018, which which caused an alert, and the government concluding that aerated concrete blocks were now past their life expectancy. So we have a lot to do, but again, it's about dividing what is a political issue and what is a practical issue. The practical issue is about rebuilding these blocks and ensuring that they are safe. So that divides into two. Finding spaces for children to be taught in safely, which probably means temporary classrooms. Can you site a temporary classroom somewhere if so much of the school land has already been sold off? So again, we come back to the short-sightedness of previous governments. And then if there isn't a concrete base, that needs to be built up, a concrete or tarmac base that needs to be built up in order to support the temporary classrooms. So putting in temporary classrooms, we are told, could take up to 7 months. And yet we have to ensure the education of our children. And one way of doing this, again, is to outsource and to do everything on Zoom. Well, that means that parents are then bound in the home. They can't go out to work, so it has an ongoing impact. And what we need probably is a mix of Zoom classes and real classes, and we need to use Zoom in a more intelligent and more coherent way. We can't just replace the class we're doing in the classroom on Zoom, because it doesn't work like that, because actually, among other things, it's boring. Secondly, of course, when you're using Zoom, you can get through far more information. So you need somebody to mentor children who are being taught on Zoom, and you need Zoom classes structured for Zoom rather than simply transferred from the lesson plans which have been worked up for the last 20 years. So everything needs to be rethought, and we need experts in the field of Zoom teaching. We need experts who can think about restructuring lessons, as well as experts who can restructure the school estate and factor in the need for repair and the need for immediate structures that will allow for a school to assemble. So that's what we're looking at. The aerated concrete RAAC, a problem which was identified some years ago and which has been shelved. And then we've also got the additional story which leaked out yesterday that Gillian Keegan had apparently said that we only have to sit on this problem for 18 months, and then it will have to be dealt with by the next government, by someone else, by Labour. So she automatically, in that statement, if it's true, concedes defeat. She accepts that Labour is going to be the next government, and we might see more of this nastiness of transferring the buck to the incoming party. That is the problem when defeat is so clearly looming.